Yes, this is the Sports Saga podcast presented by Aldias Electric, the Gonzalez family team of Keller Williams, Southwood Tuppa, and Smack Apparel, the official fan gear of the Sports Saga podcast. Hi again, everyone. Great to have you along. Brady Kudo back with Keegan Hamlin sporting UMass Lowell today.
That's correct.
Do you want to give a shout out to Melania Shalosky Motorsports, who Melania picked up her fifth consecutive win down to the Waterford Speed Bowl. JOE MALFA is here with us. Joe is really, I like to think of him as a jack of all trades when it comes to the soccer world. He's CONCACAF, he's NWSL, he's NCAA college soccer with the ESPN. I would say PHF, but that's a whole nother thing. Actually, I want to ask you about it. It's been a few months since we've talked. You said earlier Wimbledon and chilling for right now.
That's it. This is, as you get into this, like you appreciate the times in the schedule where you got a few days because they don't always pop up. And when they do, you enjoy them. And I'm in that stretch now where like this week, I was off Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, working Saturday, Sunday. And my parents are coming down to town to visit for the week. And I have like one day of work next week. But like that 2-week stretch was been pretty chill. Beyond that, I think like the 10 days after this stretch I just had, I have like one day off. So days like this where I could just chill, talk to you guys, watch some Wimbledon, probably later this afternoon, go in the pool, relax. Like these days you cherish when they're here, but it's good times right now.
It's weird because you just had your Gold Cup, and we'll get into that in a minute. Is it league? You've got a lot of Leagues Cup coming up next. Is that?
There's a bunch. I mean, everything kind of starts rolling. I'll have some Leagues Cup radio for Inter Miami. Nice. Gold Cup was like a nice time in the schedule now, where a lot of USL teams kind of cut back on their how many games they had coming hot and heavy, where it was a bit of a gap in the schedule because players were gone to Gold Cup, and NWSL has a gap in the schedule because players are gone to the World Cup. So this is like that like weird dead period, and then boom, picks right back up. Right. Leagues Cup, NWSL, Challenge Cup, USL into the swing of like their more methodical, busier schedule. So it's ebbs and flows, and more flows than ebbs. And right now we're in an ebb, so we enjoy it while it's here.
So let's get in. I'm gonna throw this to Keegan first because he actually predicted in our last episode that the United States was going to lose to Panama, and I strongly disagreed. I was like, they're winning the whole thing. You did Mexico, Jamaica. You didn't? Yes. Did you do U.S. Panama as well?
Nope. I was sitting around watching that game, waiting for my game to start. But yeah, I had Mexico, Jamaica.
So Keegan, I'll throw it to you. Yep. I mean, hey, you were right. Congratulations. Okay. Mexico, Jamaica. I went 0-2 in the semifinals. I thought Jamaica was actually going to pull the upset, but what'd you make of Mexico?
You know what? They came out right out of the gate. Like there wasn't that big of a crowd at the Allegiant Stadium, but I think the fans that were there got behind them right away, and that's what helped kind of boost them and their team morale in a sense.
You've seen Jamaica a lot, Joe. I mean, it wasn't that. It was weird because I feel like they really could have played a lot better, and they just didn't find their niche. I feel like I think Mexico came in the first 25 minutes, set the pace of the game, and that was it.
That was it. And spot on. Like they just right out of the gates, just score 80 seconds in for Mexico. It changes the complete dynamic of the game, and it just didn't really play into Jamaica's hands matchup wise, where anytime that ball entered the middle third of the field, Mexico was winning it. And you look at this Jamaica team, they're built to succeed out wide and up top, where you've got your front four of Bobby Reed, Leon Bailey, Mikel Antonio, and Damari Gray. All four are playing in the Premier League. Then you go back and you have Andre Blake backstopping it all, who's been a top goalkeeper for a while now. And even on the wings defensively, you got Javane Brown on one side and Amari Bell on the other side. So you got two good wing backs, you got a great front four, you got a great goalkeeper. Only problem is up the middle, it leaves something to be desired. Deshaun Bernard is up and coming as a center back, but doesn't have the experience. Damian Lowe is an MLS backup. Kevin Lambert is a USL starter. And Lativo Darren there is again another one who just started his Jamaica tenure. So the spine of that team, the two center backs, the two defensive midfielders, they were outmuscled and outpaced to every single ball by Mexico's midfield three of Chavez, Sanchez, and Romo. Edson Alvarez didn't even get the start because he was nursing an injury, came on late, and it just showed you how much stronger Mexico's midfield was, and that was the whole game. I mean, both of the goals in the first half, it was quick turnovers by Mexico, winning the ball in the middle third, quick turn in the attack. The first one was just good transition. The second one was a worldy free kick, but it was, again, a transitional play that led to the foul outside the 18, that led to the free kick. So it was just not a good matchup for Jamaica in the middle. And you hoped maybe it could be like a unique Jamaica-Panama final without the U.S. or Mexico. That would have been very interesting, but it's still the first ever time Mexico and Panama meet in a Gold Cup final. So it is still a nice, unique new final in that regard too.
I mean, my big thing is why I was rolling with Jamaica is because, you know, that front four is really, really underrated.
I was with you. I really thought they could do it. I think the game would have been different. This is very stating the obvious, but I think the game would have been different if you don't get punched in the mouth 80 seconds in,
right,
where you can sort of settle into what you would hope to settle into, and maybe find something on a counter. But it just, when you can see the 80 seconds in, it's likely not going to go your way on the night.
And even, like, you know, how many times has Hallgrimsson really conceded a goal that early in his career? It doesn't happen often, and I'm a fan of his. So, you know, when I first learned he was taking over the Jamaican national team, I was like, this could really be something. We saw it.
Oh,
They're
absolutely trending in the right direction. And, you know, you look at the upcoming Nations League that starts in September, reformatted where the top four teams get by to the quarterfinals, and League A has the Group A, Group B. Jamaica should be one of the top teams and fly through to the quarterfinals, and they're doing some good things there. And Panama, I mean, Keegan, shout out to you for having that pick. I was with you. I thought Panama was taking down the U.S. Going into that game. Panama's sent their A team, and look, Panama's A team against the U.S.'s A team was Christian Pulisic scoring a hat trick in the final World Cup qualifier last year. But now it was Panama's A team against the U.S.C. team, whatever you want to call it. So I was with you. I've seen them a couple times in the tournament too. They're really good, really solid, playing really well now, and kind of Ski has been outstanding in the midfield. I don't know if they could take down Mexico in the final, but I was with you. I felt that Panama was taking down the U.S.
You know, I'm just hoping for an exciting final. Can I compare the two games real quick?
Go ahead.
Because, I feel like Jamaica and the U.S. were kind of in opposite positions, because the U.S. was going from a strong Canada side to, you can say, maybe a little bit of a weaker Panama side. So maybe they were kind of getting a little bit arrogance, and like, if we're able to beat this Canada side, whereas Jamaica, you're going from Guatemala, which really, if Andre Blake's not in that game, they might lose that, because he was making 2-3 saves that could have easily ended up in the back of the net to a great team in Mexico.
And don't forget the rest advantage too. The way the quarters were staggered, the U.S. was coming in on one less day of rest, and they had just played 120 minutes. So like, just a bunch of factors to your point, just like didn't go the U.S.'s way, and didn't necessarily go Jamaica's way in the end against Mexico either.
Once they hit at the end of the, was it like the 94th minute, whatever, when added time and regular time concluded, I was like, now it wasn't looking so good, because you know, and even if, let's say it's a U.S. Mexico final, I would have picked Mexico.
Absolutely, 100%,
because you can't 240 minutes then to go play Mexico.
Yeah, and Mexico, it's not their necessarily like true A team either. And Jaime Lozano's been the coach for 5 minutes. I mean, he just took over after the Nations League.
Yeah.
But that's still a team that, if you were to kind of take a look ahead at their 2026 World Cup cycle and how they want to bring this team along over the next year or two, I would say Mexico has at least 80 to 85% of their true A team, if not a little more, you could argue in places. The U.S. had 5%. Matt Turner's going to be on that A team, obviously, as a starting goalkeeper. Jesus Ferreira might come off the bench on the A team.
Yeah.
Miles Robinson might come off the bench on the A team. And there's not another soul, I think, in the Gold Cup team that we just saw who's even sniffing the A team at this point. So it would have decisively, I think, than Mexico in the final. And to be honest, I'm not mad at losing in penalties to Panama, because the U.S. probably would have gotten embarrassed by 2 or 3 goals, in my opinion, against Mexico in the final.
Yep.
And I just don't think I would have wanted to deal with kind of like the ramifications of that in the media. Oh, you just beat them 3-0 last month. What happened now? Well, nuance, it wasn't the same team. So in a way, it's probably a good thing. And let's see Panama, let's see Mexico, and whatever happens, happens.
All right. So Joe, start us off. Mexico, Panama. Give me the scoreline. Give me your pick to win.
All right, so I can pick it because I'm not calling it, so that's a good thing. That'll be Mike Watson, Devin Kerr, I believe, on Sunday. I'm gonna say, so the way Panama's been playing, they can sort of match Mexico in the midfield with the way Carrasquilla has been playing centrally. They've gotten a good play on the wings from Bárcenas and Ismael Diaz. It's a very even matchup stylistically and personnel-wise. I'm going to go Mexico just because I think they have that slight quality edge in the end. And when it comes down to it, that crowd is obviously going to be very pro-Mexico, and that could be a difference maker. But I don't think there's much separating these teams. I think it's either, 1-0, 2-1 in 90 for Mexico, but I could very much see this game, 0-0 through 90 as both teams just gut it out, and then maybe Mexico puts in a goal or two in extra time and wins it in 120. But I think they inch past Panama. I don't think it'll be decisive either way. I think, like I said, if Mexico played the U.S. in the final, probably a 2-3 goal win.
Yeah.
This Panama team is much stronger on paper than I think people realize, and it's a very slim margin. Wouldn't stun me if Panama plucked Mexico on the day or took them to penalties, but I'm going to go Mexico by a goal.
I'm going to go Mexico 3-1. I think it'll be close maybe for the first half, maybe into 60 minutes. But I think just Mexico being there so many times, Panama's not used, I'll say that, to like the big stage. You're in a regional final. So just because of that, I'll go Mexico 3-1.
I'm going to go Mexico 1-0.
Okay.
I'm the same, I think Panama is going to make them work. And I'm with Joe. I think this is going to be a 85th minute. Luis Chavez, somebody, get it in. Henry Martin, he's had a great tournament. I don't know. It's so weird because again, it's Mexico's got the quality edge. They got the experience edge, but Panama just doesn't go away.
Right.
I feel like so. I mean, it's tough.
It's going to be a fun game. I think it's going to be a lot more entertaining of a game than people realize, because you see Mexico, Panama, you think there's just mentally, you think there's a gap, but there really isn't all that much. And matchup wise, it should be pretty even.
So before you got your rounds here at Vista, you spent some time at the University of Maryland.
I did.
What's UMD like for those who may not know?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, it's in many ways it's your stereotypical like D1 school where it's a big campus, that you can make feel small, and by that I mean like acreage. It's large. It's designed in such a way that the science buildings are next to each other, dorms are next to each other, the athletic facilities are next to each other, so there's little pockets. So it's a big place that you can make feel small. It felt like home, being from Jersey and being not too far away from New York City. Like I felt in the same way, like on the suburbs, on the outskirts of DC and Baltimore. So it's homey. It's that big D1 sports feel where you can go see a top 10 basketball team. You can go see a football team who's a bowl team every year, but not necessarily a great team every year, maybe 7-5. But you get to see a number 2 Ohio State come into town, and you get to see a number 5 Michigan come into town, and it's a heck of an experience. And school-wise, I couldn't ask for a better place to be with a journalism school, and the opportunities afforded to me through the radio station, through Big Ten Network Plus, through all of that. It's a great spot to be for any student. There's a reason why you start to see it on some of like the top lists every year as far as like public universities, and you see it on the top journalism school list. It's all there, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world.
Now, do you think Maryland like helped boost your interest in like the sports media world, or did you already have that coming in?
I definitely had it coming in. I knew that I wanted to get into the field. Now, as far as the path I took, that's where I just give a lot of credit to the opportunities afforded to me at Maryland and the setup of the whole thing. I came in wanting to be a sports writer. And maybe the first week or so, there was this like event fair where it's out on the main center of campus and a bunch of tables set up. And I passed by the radio table and I was like, oh, give it a try. Like something in my genre, if you will, where I thought I wanted to do sports writing. Let's see how the radio is. Saw that, signed up, started calling some like women's soccer games, and from there men's soccer, and then from there men's basketball, and so on and so forth. And just by those opportunities existing and that infrastructure existing, it allowed me to go from, hey, I came in wanting to do this writing, but I kind of like what's over here and calling games. And then from there, there were classes that aided that, and classes that showed you different sides of the industry. And then there was the Big Ten Plus, and BTN has such a good relationship with all the Big Ten schools in that regard. So I knew I wanted to get into sports media, but as far as the direction I took, that's just a credit to the school and the opportunities it provided. It really helped me see that this was my path, and from there just forged it.
When did you start doing hockey?
Started doing hockey, funny enough, it was at Maryland. We don't have a team. We have a club team. And the club hockey team, it's basically intramural, but you're playing against other colleges who also basically have an intramural hockey team. Like it's fun. Got to do a couple of just games. We had a radio box. We just borrowed for the day from the radio station. It didn't go anywhere. We just did it for fun, and to kind of have it in practice. And that was my first time that I did it. I'm a big hockey fan. Sorry to see your Bruins in the background, but I'm a Rangers fan, and it always something I wanted to do. I tried it there, very low level. Always knew it existed. Then got to Vista, and PHF happened to exist and come onto our radar. So I was like, hey, let me give this a try. And that's how it happened. Like simple as that. And it wasn't something where I was like, hey, I want to get into hockey, do this, do that. I did it for fun at Maryland, and it transmitted to absolutely nobody. And then just stroke of luck, it happened to come on my radar at Vista over there with PHF. So that's how I got into hockey. And yeah, so you'll find like in this industry, that's kind of how a lot of things happen. It just kind of happens. You don't necessarily do this, do that, or have this or have that happen. It just kind of happens.
So I want to get into the PHF. So those who don't know or may not have heard, the PHF was bought out. Correct me if I'm wrong. PHF was bought out, and there's going to be a new league next winter.
That's the gist of it. My details are basically anything you read as well. I wish I could tell you more than that, but from what I've gathered from the press releases, from the articles, essentially the PWHPA existed, and their goal was to get to a point where we have one league that has all the best players. PHF thought that they could be the one league that has all the best players, and little by little, the last couple of years, you'd seen players from the PWHPA joining the PHF, and it was kind of like a staring contest. Eventually, one side was going to blink, and at some point, negotiations would take place where one went into the other. And all my understanding of it is that at the end of the day, the PWHPA side of it and investors on that side of it made the PHF an offer, and the powers that be deemed it the right direction for the growth of women's hockey going forward. And that's kind of it right now. I think we're all kind of waiting to see what comes next. They said there was like a 30 to 60 day timeline as far as releasing more. All we know is there will be, I think, 6 teams at about 23 players per team, and they are hoping to start in January. And for now, that's it. We're kind of in that weird, like I said, dark period where it's in that 30 to 60 day range where they told us by then maybe they'll have more info, but we haven't gotten to that 30-day mark yet. We're at about, I think, day 14, 15, something like that. So we'll get there. But for now, it's really bare bones. I'm very curious and excited to see what happens next. It was interesting to see just a wide range of emotion and opinions on the day of. And I've gotten to a point where, I have relationships with people who played in the league. Madison Packer was a color commentator of mine when the Riveters had a couple of off weekends. She popped down and did some color for us. And I was kind of just kind of going based off of her tweets and her Instagram posts, because she's a leader amongst leaders when it comes to the players. And I think her post kind of summed it up. There was definitely like a sadness to it, where a lot of players who were now realizing their dreams of playing professional hockey would no longer be able to do so. But for the future of the game, this is maybe the step that needed to be taken. So it's a weird kind of duality to it, and you could see both sides of it. And again, a leader amongst leaders in Madison Packer is pointing out that there's both sides of it, that there is that sad part, but there is that excitement for the future. So all we can kind of do is sit back now and watch and see what happens, and hope that powers that be do the right thing by all the players and do the right thing by the sport.
Interesting, because I was also seeing like the mixed reviews, and I was like, oh, and my first initial thought was either this is going to really grow the game or it's going to kill it.
Yeah.
So I know it's early, but it's interesting. It really is. Another interesting thing that's early, and you're not necessarily in the heart of it, but you see this a lot. The United Soccer League is voting to adopt promotion and relegation. Joe, I'm going to get your take on this first, then I'm going to go to Keegan. Right? Like,
yeah, it's a big step. And again, like, all I know is what Tom Bogert put out in that article.
Yeah.
And similar to what we said for the PHF, right? It's a big step. And it could either crash and burn, or it could thrive. And it's up to the powers that be to make sure they do it right. Because if done properly, it's a game changer for the sport in this country. And, it's obviously been talked about for a while, and to see it possibly on the brink, if everything from that Bogert report turns out to be accurate, if that's the direction it's going. And he's a great reporter, and he's usually spot on. I don't know that I've seen him kind of trip up in the past. Anything that he says usually is going to happen. So I would guess that the vote is going to happen as he said it's going to, and what they're talking about is what's going to be on the table. It changes the sport in the country. It changes the dynamic of how we view the sport in this country, even as fans. Forget the side of working in it, and from a business standpoint, it just changes the way fans look at it. And the biggest thing that I can say, from being around the USL now for a few years, and seeing on the periphery some other leagues and some other teams pop up, there is such a market for soccer at that level in this country, from the grassroots level in the community. And there's so many markets who would be awesome to be USL teams. And if this means there's more expansion, which, there's the Milwaukees of the world, there's Rhode Island, there's Arkansas was just announced this week as a future spot for USL. So there's so many of these markets. And another one that I'll shout out is Annapolis Blues. They play in the NPSL. This was their inaugural season. Kyle Beckerman's a big investor, and they have like a good MLS core. They've been averaging about 7,000 fans per game, and they're just an NPSL side, which
that's very good.
Even a step or two below USL. It's kind of semi-pro. You get those teams that will pop up in US Open Cup. They're in year one. They're playing in Annapolis at Navy Stadium, and you see them getting 7,000. And like, that's just another example where, hey, teams like that around this country exist. And now if you're telling them that, oh, there's a possibility of this 3-tiered system where you can get into, and you can rise, you can fall, you can grow, it's a game changer for the country and the sport.
There's two sides of it for me. One side is going to be like, it's never been done. Well, it has been done, but like not in our area. Like, it's not common. How will the public perceive it? And as Brady said, will it crash, burn, or will it be successful? But then there's another side of me that's like, this can help make soccer players actually try and give a crap about the game. It'll put more pressure on them. The fans will show up, because I think they'd be more interested, like comparing a game where you could possibly clinch a playoff spot or be eliminated or be demoted to another league or moving on up. So I think you got to look at it from both sides, but I would not be a fan of it.
In as far as what you said too, like, there's been times the past couple of years, and this is just human nature, where I've been calling USL games, and it's September, it's October, and a team is already eliminated from the playoffs, or they're on the brink of playoff elimination, and the fan turnout maybe wasn't what it was in the summer, or the fan turnout wasn't what it was back in the beginning of the year in March and April. Fan turnout's probably going to be the same now because that team's fighting to stay up in their division. So, and that's the beauty of what you saw even just a few months ago when Everton stayed up dramatically on the last day of the EPL season. They rushed the field. They didn't just win a title. All they did was make sure they were in 17th place instead of 18th, 19th, or 20th. And you saw the fans rush the field. And it was such a weird scene. And Peter Drury did a great job just kind of encapsulating it all, where you had this elation, fans storming the field, having a great time. And within 5 minutes, that turned into chance to fire everybody. So like that's what you kind of get, right? When that exists, there's a buy-in until the very end in a system like that. So it's going to be interesting to see how it kind of takes hold, if it even happens again. All we've got is that Bogart report that the vote is supposed to happen, and we'll see from there. But it's again just another possible step in the right direction or the wrong direction, depending on how you look at it, for this sport in the country.
And you also mentioned it's USL to start with, so it's not MLS yet.
Right.
So it'll be like a test trial almost.
Exactly.
If this goes through, it's exactly what we need. Do you know what I mean? Because like I just wish, and again, I would like to see this happen, is MLS, USL Championship, League One, top three from the championship get promoted to MLS. Bottom three from MLS or actually, no, you couldn't even do that because you got the East and the West. So top two from the East, top two from the West. From USL,
there's a whole lot.
It's different than like I'm obviously like I'm used to the Premier League, where like that's I watch MLS and I watch Premier League. Like I don't mess with Serie A. Premier League's my thing.
Right.
So I was just gonna make that example of like, oh my God, when
it opens the door to so many possibilities going forward. And now, as far as it ever getting to a point where MLS and USL join, that's a whole separate thing. And I feel like we'd be a long time away from that, if ever. But again, you take a look at the initial reaction to the possible USL news coming out, and a lot of MLS reporters put out their think pieces of how it could work in MLS, where we're about to get a 30th team in San Diego, right? And there's still plenty of markets who want teams. Maybe it turns out the goal number for MLS is 40. And then maybe when you get to 40, you break off into 220 team, MLS 1, MLS 2. So like it allows, if you see it happen in USL, and that's still a big if, but if you see it happen and if you see it succeed, that's when everything else becomes a possibility as well.
I'm going to add one more thing to that. And again, I don't know promotion relegation like you two, though.
So think of like overseas, right? Where you have like 20 teams. Like take the Premier League, 18, 19, 20 get relegated to AAA, for example, right?
Yeah.
And 1, 2, and 3, depending on the league, will get.
And that AAA will move up.
Right.
But no, I get that part. But my thing about it would be, could you, if MLS and USL did it together, but again, as you said, we're far away from that. Couldn't it be you might end up with 2 teams from that same market share? Because you said Rhode Island might be joining it too.
Oh, that's totally possible.
You might have a struggle competing with New England and Rhode Island. You don't know.
That's possible, but it's just on the teams to kind of foster that sort of relationship with the communities where it could sustain multiple teams. Where, I mean, look, it's a different scale, obviously, but you look over in England, you've got Manchester City and Manchester United.
I was just going to bring up the Merseyside derby.
It does, exactly. So it exists, and you just have to make sure that like you can sustain it. But it just opens so many possibilities going forward.
Great example, because I was going to bring up Merseyside because it's Anfield, 5 blocks down the road is Goodison Park.
Yeah. And
Goodison Park, they could be in dead last, they could be top of the league. That place is packed. Same thing with Anfield. They're 1, they're 8, they're 12. That place is packed. So I'm all for the MLS and USL joining.
And people forget too. People forget too. Like those countries have a massive head start. The
That's
Premier
true.
League and Italy and Spain, they're a century plus into their existence. MLS is 27 years into its existence. USL is 12 years removed from modernizing the way it has in this new era. It's older than 12 years, but for all intents and purposes, we always kind of call it 12 years in the modern era. So you've got a 27-year-old league, you've got a 12-year-old league. So in the grand scheme of the sport on the global scale, it's a teenager and somebody who's in their 20s trying to figure it out like me. So these leagues aren't old, and it's going to take a while still before you see it on that scale like Merseyside or like the Manchester Derby. But again, it's growing at such a rapid pace that hasn't been seen before, and that goes for NWSL and women's sports too. Like there is just a growth so quickly happening that we haven't seen anywhere else for quite some time, where it's just booming, and it's fun to see.
Especially with you, NWSL every year, it just up.
2 more expansion teams coming next year there as well. So
that's it. The Bay
and Utah.
When's Bay and where?
Utah is coming back in, and then the Bay team. Boston is bidding to be part of the next wave. I don't know when they're making that kind of announcement, but I got you. They are continuing to try to expand down the line, but the next 2 are Utah and Bay City.
Oh, okay. I thought it was Bay City. All right, whatever. Let's get really quick. Women's World Cup is in a week. I know you don't have it, which is awesome because I can ask your opinion. Who wins?
Oh man, I'm literally starting to like toy with all the bracket tools. And if you were to ask me, okay, on the meta level, if I'm taking the US versus the field, I'm inclined to say the field just because I don't think this US team is as dominant and as cohesive as past iterations. So if you'd ask me in 2019, US or the field, US. 2015, US or the field, US. This year, US or the field, I'm probably inclined to take the field. However, as I've started to go through my bracket a little bit, I have not come across a head-to-head matchup for the US where I'm inclined to pick the opponent. So on the meta scale, I'm inclined to pick the field. On the micro scale where I go through it, I can't bring myself to pick a team other than the US because the US is so talented and because so many of the other countries lack the cohesion as well and also have injuries. The US has a couple injuries. It's more of an issue of the chemistry and finding the right mixture. But all these other countries have some of those issues plus injury issues. So I'm probably going to end up defaulting to the US. Again, US versus the field. I take the field. Specifically, I can't not pick them. Like, just I can't find a team to beat them. Some contenders that could knock them off. People are sleeping on Brazil. They have so much talent, especially in the attack. Their question mark is on the back end. England is still a threat despite their injuries. I think they could pull it off. I think people are overhyping Spain a little bit. Sweden and Japan are always teams that just sneak up on you because they're so well regimented and good cohesive teams rather than individuals, which is why I think those teams are always in the mix. I don't feel too great about Germany or France. So I would say I'm going to go with the US, and depending on how the bracket falls, don't sleep on Brazil. England can get it done. I don't think I'm leaving anybody out. Canada, I'm a little up and down on as well. But those, to me, are the top 3 contenders, the U.S., England, and Brazil.
Yeah, Brady and I were doing looking at the bracket on the last episode, and we saw that when the U.S. plays the Netherlands, if Netherlands finishes with a better goal differential, or say the Netherlands wins that game, the U.S. is set to meet Sweden in the round of 16, and I'm very worried about that one.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just, if they as a team, the US, who lack that chemistry and cohesion right now, run into a well-oiled machine, it could spell trouble. But I'll tell you this, the US will not at any point of this tournament run into a team that is more talented than they are. So that's why, again, on the meta scale, I'm inclined to say the field, because I think those cracks in the foundation can show their ugly head at some point. But the team is just so talented where they could overcome that against other teams who aren't also at that level. Just not quite there. Like, they're close. They're knocking on the door being at the US's talent level, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, and I'm going to add one more thing before Brady does his prediction. You were mentioning Brazil. I told Brady, that number 10 on Brazil, Marta, I think she's the greatest female soccer player of all time. The pressure that's going to be on her in this World Cup, because you don't have Formiga anymore. You don't have Cristiane anymore. This is probably going to be goalkeeper Barbara's last World Cup too. The pressure that's on her is ridiculous this time.
Oh, actually, I left one out. Australia too with Sam Kerr. They're gonna have that home field advantage the whole time, and she could score like crazy. So they're another one that I could see crashing a semifinal. But again, when it comes down to it, just they don't have the same quality that the U.S. possesses.
I had an awful brain fart the last episode when we touched upon it. I was like, England with Sam Kerr, and then he was like, Sam Kerr's Australia. So it was one of those like
innocent mistake. She plays for Chelsea,
right? And it was I was like, oh my god. And then I thought of when Shaq was like, no, I like Siakam, and then Chuck was like, I like Pascal, and then Shaq was like, I like Siakam, and then Ernie was like, he's on Inside the NBA, and he was like, it's the same person. So that's, I don't know, it's just whatever. But I mean, it's so extremely difficult to pick against the United States of America, man. I mean, it really is. 2 in a row, and I think it'll be 3 in a row. I mean, the team that's going to be the toughest. There are 2 teams that are going to be the toughest. Are going to be Sweden and England. Spain, Netherlands. I don't have Netherlands getting out of the group.
Yeah.
I think Portugal is going to slide into that 2 spot. I'll always pick that one, even like in the Men's World Cup. I was completely wrong. I thought Canada was going to make a Cinderella run. Canada finished it last in the group. I always pick that one team that's like, all right, there's going to be one team that flops, and there's going to be one team that shocks everybody. I think the team that shocks everybody is probably going to be Australia. And I think the team that flops is going to be the Netherlands. But again,
that's fair though, because the Netherlands aren't having Van Vanendal in goal or Vivian Miedema, so we don't know.
And Sam Kerr in front of her, home country, that's hard to bet against. So look out for Australia. I'm riding the US. But yeah, it's the best team in the world. I think this is going to be, I think Alyssa Thompson is going to introduce herself to the world, and I'm very, very excited. Sophia Smith is going to introduce herself to the world, and then Megan Rapinoe is going to get the send-off she deserves. So again, it's just hard to bet against the 2-time reigning champions. Where can we find JOE MALFA in the next couple of weeks? I know you said your schedule's picking up. What's next on the docket for you?
So we've got coming up. Sometimes I forget my own schedule. I've got some Inter Miami radio this weekend against St. Louis.
You must be a happy man.
Oh yeah. I'll be at Messi's first game, the 21st of July. I won't be calling it. Chris Whittingham will be on the call for that game. I believe I'll be on the call for the second game in the Leagues Cup for them on the 25th against Atlanta. July 27th, I've got there's an international friendly on ESPN2 at 10:30 Eastern. I've got San Diego Loyal of USL against Borussia Dortmund. That's the 27th, and then I think the weekend of the 28th and 29th, I've got NWSL both days. So busy end of the month, and then once we get into August, mostly just back to USL, NWSL, Leagues Cup, stuff like that.
Dortmund's a fun team. Hey, we're running out of time. Joe, thank you very, very much for hopping on. We appreciate it a lot. Again, it's
thank you guys. Happy to be on. Enjoy the World Cup.
You as well.
We'll see if our US picks are right, and we'll have some fun watching. And it's going to be like watching the Aussie Open every winter too. You got to get used to the sleep schedule. So take a nap, do what you got to do. It's going to be fun. Thank you guys for having me on.
Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. We'll see you soon.